My name is Gabrielle Howard, and this is Reflection, I believe, number 5. And to answer the question, should the UT Tyler girl abort or maintain her pregnancy based on the utilitarian theory? Utilitarianism states that we should do whatever brings us the most pleasure. So it depends on if having a child in her life brings her more pleasure than the pain that the rape brought her. So if she decides that having a baby is what she's always wanted more than anything in her life, no matter how the baby got there, then the pleasure of having the baby would overcome the thought process of rape. But if the pain of the rape and the thought of it and looking at a child who indeed might look just like the person who harmed her, then that pain might overwhelm that thought process. So the utilitarian theory tells us to do what brings us the most pleasure. So it depends on if that young lady either would like to anything more than to be a mother, or anything more than to forget that it all ever happened. The president of the UT Tyler for the gun control law, should he exercise the provision and call a faculty vote? If the pleasure of him knowing that his students are safe overwhelms his thought process for whether they would be less protected if something was to happen on campus, it's going to have to be up to him for that as well to call that vote. Whether his pleasure of knowing that his students are safer when they carry themselves, or if one might go stir crazy because he was allowed to carry, that guilt he might carry because he could have done something about the young man or woman or young persons in general, if there's a group having guns on campus, and that it was allowed. So it depends on if that guilt might be outweighed by the happiness he might feel that his students can protect themselves. So to call that vote, he would need to look at those two things. You can't really predict with these two scenarios what they should or shouldn't do, because we don't really know them. We don't know that if that young lady would have wanted to be a mother. We don't know if preventing students from carrying a gun might prevent them from living one day. To make these decisions is kind of hard to do. So as students, and knowing about the utilitarian theory, I can only give you my answer if I was in those scenarios. So say it was me who was raped, I would keep the child, because having a child is important to me, even more than the situation that I've brought the child to come to term. And then whether I was that principal, I would state that we would probably have to hold a vote, because preventing many students from carrying a gun versus trying to stop one is kind of my theory. So if we don't already have the temptation that and those stressors together, usually most terrorist attacks that happen on school is either due to extreme stressors or due to extreme circumstances at home, or bullying. In those scenarios, people who have snapped at one point in time cannot maintain their mental ability to understand that, oh, hey, killing somebody right now is wrong. So to prevent that, or to have them from making that choice, then he would have to decide, or I would have to decide, if whether it would be safer for my students to carry or to not. And I would think that it would be safer for my students to not carry.